going this way one day. For 6,000 years, man has accepted the finality of physical death, and when it comes, he goes to a familiar grave. But today, for those who see the prospect of immortality, there's a new and less permanent resting place. Here in California's San Fernando Valley, the start of a silent revolution which could affect the future of the world. In those capsules, people who determine to live twice, who prefer the freezer to the grave. The first of the die now, live later group. Men and women frozen solid in their cylinders, waiting for the future. And they believe cheating death. Do you regard this lady as dead?
Well, she's certainly dead. There's no question about that. She's dead by any legal or in any legal or medical sense that we have. She is clinically dead. Now, you could say she isn't biologically dead because the cells haven't continued to deteriorate past the point of clinical death. In other words, she hasn't started to rot or decay in any way. So she's preserved as well as she was at the point of death.
Mrs. Mandel, it's your son, Stephen.
That's right.
Who's in that capsule.
Right.
And your wife, Anne, is in this box.
That's correct.
But do you accept that he is dead, or do you accept that he is in limbo?
I accept the fact that he's dead. Clinically dead, as we know it right now.
Mr. de Blazier, your wife, do you believe that she is dead in this box, or do you think she is just waiting?
Clinically dead. Same as Mrs. Mandel. If I had any doubts at all, I wouldn't have had this done. At present standards, clinically dead, she is. But we all live for hope and in the future.
Mrs. Pauline Mandel, a Bronx typist, and the capsule containing her son Stephen, age 24. Officer de Blazier, a Manhattan policeman, and his frozen wife, Anne. Both believe there's a chance that one day these icy bodies will be thawed back to life.
I don't have any wild hopes or ideas on this. No, I'm pretty level-headed about it. But as I've said before, I've certainly lost nothing. If he's dead, he's dead. And if he isn't, if there is a chance, I want him to have it.
Now, at best, if there is a chance, which you've given him, what would you hope would happen to him?
Well, I hope that he'll be one of the lucky ones, that eventually they will find a cure for his disease and be able to bring him back.
This was my idea.
Why did you have it done?
Well, she was a very unusual person. She was the type of person that was a gift. She was compassionate, devoted, religious, and we need a lot more people around like her. And I felt that nothing was done medically for her. That's out today with her disease.
She had cancer.
That's correct. And if there is one last chance or any hope at all, I would like her to have that. So I have to live with myself. If there is a chance, I want to make sure that Anne has it.
Anne's chances cannot yet be measured. All you can say is that while burial's final, freezing has committed her to nothing but a second chance. If this is to be a revolution in our life and death style, it has traditionally small beginnings, with a nucleus of enthusiasts giving their time to the dead, and believing their cause needs only the impetus of one famous death, one frozen statesman, one celebrity in cold storage. The chairman of the New York Cryonics Group, Curtis Henderson, a solicitor, brings dry ice for Anne's body to a Long Island cemetery. However rich or powerful or well-liked you may be in life, when you're dead, you're very dependent. In cryonic suspension, the body's preserved against natural decay. Every cell, every bacterium's frozen. You won't get better, but you won't get any worse. Then, at some future date, when science has learned how, you can be thawed out, diseased organs replaced, and rejuvenated for your second life?
I think you have a chance. I personally think it is a very good chance to be revived and be young and healthy again if you are frozen when you are dead. I also think that what we do as a group and what people do to help us will affect the chance. The more people who are frozen, the bigger the movement is, the more money that is put in trust for research to get people out of the box, so to speak, and to cure these ills and make this effective, the greater chance that it will be a success. We all have seen these consciously directed crash programs, such as the space program and the Manhattan Project, result in overwhelming success. So it's obvious that scientific progress is not just something that's happenstance. If you really want something and you're really willing to spend a lot of money on it and spend a lot of time and energy, so far man has always been able to do it. And this is something really worth doing. This is really solving each individual's biggest problem. Each individual on this planet has one big overriding problem, his own death. And it's a big problem, and no one has solved it yet.
There are hints that, or evidence that biological material can be frozen and thawed. And tissues have been frozen and thawed, blood and sperm. And there are evidence in the literature that even perhaps organs, such as dog kidneys and spleens. And this makes it seem quite likely that someday we will be able to freeze and thaw a mammal.
Now, have you frozen a mouse yet?
Not that return. We've frozen mice, but they haven't come back.
Oh, that's rather important.
Yeah, of course. Well, we aren't there yet. But that doesn't mean we're not going to be there.
Teaching at the New York Institute of Technology, Paul Siegel, Research Director of the Cryonic Society. When does he believe the first frozen man will be resurrected?
I really can't answer that. Perhaps, maybe next year, a process. There are some interesting processes around for freezing and thawing. Perhaps one of these will apply to the freezing and thawing of a whole animal. And maybe then it'll be a year or 2 or 3.
As close as that?
Yeah, well, maybe we won't get a breakthrough. Or maybe these breakthroughs aren't really breakthroughs. And it'll take us 10, 20, 50 years. The whole concept of cryonic suspension is that if you suspend a man under low temperature, you can keep him for quite a long time. Tissues have been kept, I believe, as long as 10 years.
Yes, but you can't resuscitate him. That's just what it's all about.
No, not now, of course. But the hope is that at a future time we can. I mean, who can say what the future technology is?
Individual capsules filled with liquid nitrogen and independent of electricity cost about £2,000. Another £2,000 for maintenance while frozen. So a $10,000 insurance policy is today's price for an alternative to death in the very last word in capsules.
We decided to design certain aspects into this thing to make it psychologically more appealing to people. It's, well, from an engineering standpoint, more efficient. Things such as these stanchions were designed to give an appearance of massiveness. They look like 6-inch blocks of aluminum. And the idea behind this is that people are basically buying a forever machine.
A what?
A forever machine. We really don't know how long people will be in these things. Anything that looks massive and strong will give them a feeling of security.
So people basically want to be secure even when they're dead?
Well, yeah, this is basic psychological behavior. People act like this. We also wanted to look very contemporary, 21st century stuff. The stanchions, the fins, everything that'll be on this unit will give the appearance of, well, almost like a spaceship, I'd say.
So when it's opened up in 500 years' time, you're not going to be ashamed of it?
Well, I'm not so much worried about that. I am worried most definitely about the technical aspects of this thing. Whether I have a product that will in fact work, it will work better than anything's currently available. We spent quite a bit of engineering time on this for over 6 months.
Before we scoff at the score of men and women who've already given death the cold shoulder, and the hundreds who are preparing to, remember, it's impossible even to hint at the future capabilities of science. Could Shakespeare's doctor ever have dreamed of a heart transplant? Even today, there are degrees of death. Thousands have been revived after drowning or electrocution, for they were only slightly dead. And certainly science will one day be able to cure most of the diseases which kill us now. Only 40 years ago, pneumonia was fatal. But orthodox medicine remains skeptical and suspicious of instant immortality. The president of America's Life Extension Foundation, Dr. Harry Johnson.
If it were legally established that this person is not really dead, but just in limbo, awaiting to be reawakened, shall we say, then that person's estate could never be liquidated. And all his accumulations of his life would go on into perpetuity. And he would logically say, keep my money for me until I come back to this life 1,000 years from now. And we could see what havoc that would raise, with laws, inheritance taxes, and distribution of wealth after death to families. The only person who would gain by it would be the one who was promoting this concept, who would be responsible for maintaining this body at this in this frozen state, for which I imagine very significant fees would be charged. Oh, I can see no end of economic complications that could develop. I have no fear, though, because I am so convinced that such a thing is beyond any realm of possibility.
As far as economic chaos is concerned, well, I think a lot of the new biological developments, in fact, any of the new technological developments are going to cause vast disruptive economic changes, just as technology always has in the past. I don't think that there's any reason, or for that matter, I don't think that there's any way you can prevent that. I think that's part of historical change, and...
Yes, but historical change doesn't expect millions and millions of frozen bodies lying around awaiting resurrection.
Well, historical change didn't expect any of the historical changes that took place either. But each one has taken place. Historical change didn't expect mass production. It didn't expect automation or any of the things that have come about, and it has never really truly properly anticipated them. And as far as the millions of frozen bodies waiting resurrection, if these people have put this money away in trust, I think it'll be one of the greatest capital accumulation mechanisms that ever came along, and if it works, it works.
Professor Robert Ettinger, Michigan physicist and mentor of cryonics, wrote the book suggesting that death was curable, which started the immortality movement, for which he sees an incredible future.
We expect it will be a $1 trillion industry, right? A $1 trillion industry eventually. And people are interested from a commercial standpoint, but we've had in the past, we have had to some degree this question of chicken and egg, you see. The people who would be potential suppliers of the services and the products are hesitant to get into the field in the absence of a proven market. On the other hand, the people who are the would-be consumers or buyers are helpless to buy or to exhibit the market if there's nothing to purchase, if the services and goods don't exist. So we've been breaking that vicious circle by main force, by our own efforts, putting up our own money and building our own installations and building our own membership who will provide the potential customers. And I think that when it becomes known, as it gradually will, that the number of life insurance policies which have been executed for this purpose total in the millions, and when it becomes known that some hundreds and thousands of people are definitely planning this, and when it becomes known that we do now have substantial support in the scientific community, which earlier we did not, I think that we will have a large-scale commercial investment.
Now, Professor Ettinger tells me that this is going to be a $1 trillion business. You're the start.
I hope he's right. If he's right, we'll be very happy.
You're in on the ground floor.
At least we're in on the ground floor.
It seems quite a small capsule for 20 bodies.
Well, one of the reasons for that is just a mere matter of physics that's usually overlooked. And most of us tend to look upon our size from a vertical point of view, because as humans we do claim that uniqueness of being upright, but in a prone position, of course, we're only 6 inches tall, And when you begin to look at the sizes of human beings from this point of view, why then you get an entirely different perspective on the use of space.
The president of a Los Angeles company now making capsules for Americans who'll never say die, on the site of the world's first cold storage depot for humans.
I've heard talk of freezatoriums for 200 patients.
Yes, That's, I'd say, is a conservative figure. I would say it'd be more realistic to think in terms of 500 or more.
Now, you're bringing a capsule down here.
A multiple storage vessel will be placed in this facility right here for.
And how many bodies
storage.
will be in the module?
Between 15 and 20. This is the first phase of this storage facility. This is a relatively small one. There will be another one that'll come after this that'll store several hundred.
It's curious that if it's so feasible that so many people are not only hesitant but aghast.
You mean at the prospect of being frozen? Well, most of us, I guess, associate being frozen with perhaps frozen meat in a freezer or something of this nature. And again, as I say, most of these objections are based on assumptions that are incorrect. A person placed in cryonic suspension is probably, without a doubt, it's the most sanitary, the most scientific and perfect form of preservation we can possibly imagine. At minus 300 degrees, there is no biological change. The biological clock has stopped, whether it be 100 or 1,000 years. And certainly this would be a lot more sanitary and superior method than cremation or burial, even if the reanimation aspect of it were taken out.
The worry, of course, is that you're going to be reanimated as a zombie, isn't it?
Well, I mean, people's minds can imagine a lot of different possible problems. We're optimistic. We choose to be optimistic rather than pessimistic. And we say, well, this is possible, but we're going to go and see. We're not going to assume that we're going to be zombies.
I'm always hearing stories that Walt Disney has been frozen.
Yes, I mentioned that briefly in my book, We Froze the First Man, because there were persistent rumors, and his studio had contacted the Society at one time for information, and there was no question about the fact that he did want to be frozen. He told this to everyone and anyone that he had the opportunity to, including many, many of his close friends. So this, of course, is a good reason for thinking it was possible, but the main reason is the secrecy surrounding the entire interment of Mr. Disney. They will not. We cannot. No records are available. Everything is missing. No one knows where he was interred, when he was interred, how he was interred, and the fact is, if indeed he was cremated, as is indicated, it would be very easily to just simply remove all the rumors, stop all the talk by just simply saying where and when. But this has not been done.
Apart from Mr. Disney, are you awaiting any other famous freezees?
Well, I could give you a long list of people who have indicated their desire to be frozen at clinical death. As far as those who have actually made arrangements, Marie Chevalier recently made arrangements with the Cryonic Society of France. Peter Sellers has had extensive communication with the Cryonic Society of California, has indicated his interest and desire, but who has actually gone ahead and made the legal and the financial and personal arrangements. At this time, I couldn't tell you.
Logical, yet preposterous, and in some way wrong, like trying to outwit God. For our values today are based on the knowledge that time is precious, that there is an end. With this cold storage concept, the idea of forever is deprived of grandeur and mystery, reduced to chemicals and cold. Yet, why should a sealed antiseptic tank be any less noble than a few square feet of earth when the worms come? To freeze every American today would produce 15 million tons of frozen people, most of whom, refusing to believe they can't take it with them, might want their fortunes, their jewels and securities frozen too. The planned freezatoriums could become a looter's paradise like the pyramids. One day, second lifers might outnumber those on their first time around. So many optimistic Americans will never say die. But orthodox medicine believes ice crystals destroy the body's cell structure and irreversible brain damage must follow death.
I would love to extinguish any possible hope on something that's potentially so dangerous and could do such untold harm to people.
Doesn't cryonics seem just beyond the fringe, just below the horizon?
To me, it's way beyond any possible horizon. I cannot conceive of it ever being a reality.
You see, the most common objection to reanimation seems to be that since it's impossible at present, it must always be impossible.
That, of course, is the favorite blind for those promoting these things to hide behind. And it's something you can't answer.
So we have evidence right now of many different kinds. Well, to quote one of the most spectacular of the fairly recent events, as you know, doctors Sudo, Kida, and Adachi at Kobe University froze the brains of several cats, and these were revived after 6 months of frozen storage. And as you know, many physicians advocate using the brainwave criterion as the principal sign of life. And if we accept this, then these cats did survive.
Oh, we have quacks in this country who promise people to cure tuberculosis and to cure cancer by a certain medication which they have a limited supply of, which is imported from Russia. But it'll cost you $1,000 an ampule because it's so rare. Dishonest from the word go. Yet there are people who are taken in by it every day in the week.
See, Professor Ettinger holds that sooner or later we could hope that ways will be found to thaw the body without damage, to repair the freezing damage, and to cure the cause of death, even, he says, the disease of old age.
Oh, this is so fantastic as, to my mind, after a great many years in the practice of medicine, to be utterly ridiculous and preposterous.
If you say that, you are saying, in effect, that progress stops right here. We will never know any more than we know now, and that's ridiculous. Nobody in his right mind believes that. And any scientist, and in the past there were many, but there are fewer of them now, who make such statements. These people are completely irresponsible. They are making assertions without support, without scientific support, of a type they would never dare to make in a scientific publication. I dare say this man may know something about biology, but I'd be willing to wager he knows nothing about probability theory. The fact is that he not only cannot prove that there is no chance, he cannot even prove that the chance is small. Now, I say this on the basis of a background of years of dialogue and argument with the scientific community. And in these years of argument, the changes of mind that have occurred have been all in one direction. Nobody who previously agreed with our thesis has changed his mind, but a great many who have previously disagreed with our thesis have changed their mind in our direction. And I think that's a rather significant thing to note in itself.
If these people were honorable, they would have frozen a cat or a dog and then reanimated it after 30 days. Laboratory animals are used all the time to establish the validity of claims. This would be a simple procedure, and if they did, then those of us who are very, very skeptical would be convinced.
We have frozen and revived a number of mammalian organs, as you know. When I say we, I mean the scientific community, not myself personally. And as time goes on, and we are giving increased support to cryobiological research, which is one of our most important interests, the research will be on a larger scale, the successes will come more frequently, and we will have increasing numbers of revivals of higher and higher organisms, and eventually full-fledged suspended animation for humans. And there will be...
You're sure of this, huh?
Reasonably sure, yes. Not certain, of course. Nothing is certain. People often ask, can revival be guaranteed? And of course the answer that we commonly give is that no, we can't guarantee that if you're frozen you'll be revived, but we can guarantee that if you're not frozen you will not be revived.